Hi guys, I'm Ian from Exospherics and welcome to my channel. This is the first episode and it's all about the bass. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm not a professional or don't profess to know anything, or everything rather, but I've been doing this for 25 years now and I'm hoping that you're going to find that nugget of information that gives you some ideas or points you in the right direction. That's really my idea behind doing this channel. First of all, if you really want to mix bass properly, you're probably going to need a treated room or time in a professional studio. Really something I've not got the luxury, or probably you've not got the luxury of having. So I compromise. I know you're really not supposed to, but that's the way I do it. And that might show in my tracks, but I'm always trying to improve and get a better mix by just using different techniques, using my ears. I'll listen to tracks over and over and over and over again in my car stereo, on monitors, on open back headphones, on closed back headphones, in the office, on ALEXA, anywhere where you're going to hear the music and see what it sounds like. Well, listen where other people will be seeing it. Mobile phone is actually probably one of the most important because it's where a lot of people listen to it. So yeah, I listen to it in mono. But the thing is, bass is so sensitive. I mean, you can make the slightest change to your mix, boom, you've just destroyed your whole mix. I mean, the thing is, bass has got so much energy. I mean, when you think about if you're at a festival or you're standing outside a nightclub, or you hear a car with a 12-inch sub driving at you, think about it. What can you hear? Bass. You just won't hear the mids, the high ends as much as the bass, because they're all easily absorbed by the air and materials around them. Bass has got so much more energy, it's got a longer waveform, it can travel further. Bass conducts through solids, which is why if you're in a flat you can hear the booming. Bass reflects, it sums up. Bass is a complete bitch. So I mean, I thought I would show you with one of my tracks how I go about mixing my bass. You may have seen this before, you may not. If you haven't, then it's good. If you have, then maybe it's reaffirming what you know, and it'll give you a boost in that direction. So what I'll do is I'll stop this track and I'll give you some idea of how, for instance, I might EQ. I will EQ each individual instrument. I will take the low end out of that instrument. So for instance, here I think we've got an ARP sound that I've got playing. I'll just solo that and just show you. So here, yeah, I've cut off there, but you've got all this low information here. That low information, the more tracks you have playing in there, the more it'll build up and muddy your track. You want to get rid of that muddiness. So what I normally do is EQ this, move it down to where it sounds good, and then bring it back to where it sounds hollow, and then bring it back to a midpoint where you can't really tell the difference, but you've cut all that mid-range, that low mud out of the mix that you don't need, and a lot of it you can't even hear anyway. This will play havoc with any compressive you got on your mix and stuff like that as well, because there's so much more energy, much power there. So I do that for each of my instruments. I mean, you'll be surprised, things like hi-hats, for instance. Hi-hats will have exactly the same low frequency. Oh, I'm going to do that. The hi-hats will have the same frequency, low information frequency there. Because you imagine if you've got a normal hi-hat and you hit it, you got the tss of it, but you've also got the clunk of that, or the ringing of the hi-hat as well. So if you look here, this is where I've got my EQ roll-off at 1.2 kilohertz. Look at all this low information here. Look at this sub-bass information you're never going to hear. That'll sum up with other stuffs, and again will muddy the track out again. This open hi-hat we got here, exactly the same thing I've done with that, and you'll see, I'll get to it, you'll see the low information there as well. Look, all that there. If you add all that together, it's really going to muddy up the track. So yeah, with the kick, this kick I've just used a standard Ableton kick on this track. It's a 909 kick. I've used Bark of the Dog, again really good program plug-in here for using. This will get you that punch of the kick going. I'll come into this later on. and then I will EQ it, EQ my kick, and I'll take out that mud again, the stuff that you're not going to have. Just keep the stuff you want to feel, because I've got a sub bass. And I think that's another thing you have to think about in a mix is what's most important in that tune. Is it the kick or is it the sub bass? Depends on that genre as well. I mean, think about R&B, drum and bass. The bass is the bit that has the more powerful end. That sub bass is what you want, and the kick's just going to kick through. It's not the bulk of the track, if you like. Whereas I think on this track, this is where I cut off my my kick, because that's what I liked. It felt right with the sub bass and the mid bass, and that's the way I went. So first of all, yeah, if you cut your kick off, again, you're freeing up all that mud out of the mix. And sometimes you'll find if you roll that back, the kick will sound a lot louder as well, because you haven't got that low information there, and messing up with compressors and all sorts. So that's that. The other thing with the EQ is if you, on this Fabfilter Pro Q3, you can load in other tracks. This is my sub bass track. You can load that up and you can get it to play the EQ curve at the same time. If I play this, you can see the sub bass. Let's play the whole track. The sub bass and the kick are clashing here slightly by this red. So you can see, and you can use that to take that out. If I move my kick out of the way, you'll see that that will go lighter. Bring it back in and you'll see it will go red again. Now what I do at that point is I use, see the awkward thing is that frequency I need that for the kick, and I need it for my sub bass. So what I'm doing is sidechaining it there. Now if you don't know what sidechain or sidechain compression is, or a compressor is, a compressor will automatically, in a way, control the volume of the, in layman terms, control the volume of the sound. So auto volume control, say. But what I'm doing to trigger that volume control is, rather than the sound itself, I'm using a kick sound, which I'm using here, which is a muted kick sound on Ableton. That is just a normal kick. If I solo it and roll it back, there you go, it's just a normal kick sound, but you won't hear it. And if you go back to, for instance, my bass, my sub bass, which is this one. I normally label and color code all these tracks as well. For some reason I haven't done it on this. I've been doing this on the train and doing it at home on two different machines. I've just been playing around really. It's become a track. So but I'll use sort of, the way I do it is I use red for my kick drum normally, brown for bass, orange and yellow for my snares, green for the hi-hat, blue for like pads and plucks, and I just go through the whole spectrum. And I use it as red's really like my kick, brown's like a brown dark low bass. I just use it, and blue's like an airy colour, and that's the way I've gone with it. So yeah, I do colour code it, but this is a bit of a mess. So yeah, so that's 7. If I look on here, you can see I've got this. I just use Kick Producer. It's a standard preset on Ableton. In fact, I have got Fabfilter C2 compressor, but I tend to use this more for sidechain. It's far simpler. So I will hit the sidechain button, select audio from. This is the audio track. So I've got that SC track, which is a muted track. The reason I've done that is because there's bits that I want to sidechain when the kick has stopped and stuff like that, so it's just easier to automate it. Some people use rather than using a kick, they use like a side snare, a side stick on a snare and stuff like that, a rim hit or a wood block sound, something with no low end frequency, and it's a lot sharper attack. I just use that, and you can see what it's doing is that kick's triggering here, boom, 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 and its gain reduction here is the volume reduction, or the gain it's reducing on the sound. So my sub bass is being, every time the kick plays, it's ducking the sub bass down, and then when the kick stops, the sub bass comes back up again. So it just gives it that little bit of room, and you don't get all those low frequencies multiplying on top of each other. Done exactly the same with the mid bass. I even do that with the hi-hats as well, or everything. In fact, most of the instruments, apart from I think the piano on this, I've sidechained, because it just gives that drive, gives the track a whole drive as well. And I will also see what my track sounds like in mono in Ableton. I might whack on the utility plug-in at the end, click on mono. That you can see what all the instruments sound like then. Another good thing as well is always have your kick in mono, always have your bass in mono. Not necessarily all your bass, because you might have, I mean, this bass I've got in this tune has got some stereo width to it, but you want the center, the low frequencies of the bass, maybe stuff below, I don't know, about 150 hertz, something like that, 120 hertz, like here, to be mono. And with this utility plugin, you can click bass mono, like that, and then that will, everything below that frequency will be in mono, and you can even solo it, see what it sounds like in mono. So I'll mute that, and you can listen to just the bass and see what it sounds like at that frequency. It's a really useful tool. Another thing I do is the whole mix. I will usually put an EQ and roll off the low end. I think I've done that in Ozone on this. Let's just open that up and have a look. It's opening on my other screen. Hang on. Close that down. Right. So on here, I will go into Imager, and I might just a little bit of tweaking here. You can see the stereo image for each of the bands, and you can move these around. I just left them as default for this. I think I might have tweaked them a bit, but you can listen to them and see what the stereo field is doing here. But if you look at my bass, I'll just take them out, take that out, take that out. You look at my bass, bang in the center. That's the kick, the bass, everything's all in the center, and that's because I've just used this bandwidth and brought everything down to mono. This is mono, this is stereo. With these, I've boosted the stereo just a tiny little bit. You don't want it too much because it mess with your mono mix as well. And then my maximizer as well on top of that. But EQ wise, I put a drop off here, depend on the mix. A lot of club systems won't go down this far, a lot of other systems won't go down this far, so it's pointless having it. And you're just gonna, again, this will trick compressors and all sorts, especially on club systems and stuff like that, and play all sorts of havoc with it. Referencing is another good thing to do with your kick and your bass. I use other tracks, professionally mastered tracks. I play them in here. Really easy to do with Ozone. You can reference the track, load a reference track in, and then look at the EQ curve. Top tip is to make sure that the track that you're playing is in the same key as the track is yours, because the kick and the bass will be at that same peak as well. There's other things you can do. Sometimes you can I load Span in, which is a free Voxengo plugin. They make some really good plugins. Sometimes I use Elephant for their limiter. That's a really good limiter, quite transparent. But I'll put Span at the end of my mix and just have a look and see how it's performing, and play another mix as well. Again, doing the same sort of thing. I'm listening to another track, referencing it, but I'm looking at the EQ, the output of that on both of them, to see what it's like. But I think the most important things are, if you can afford it, have a treated room or get a professional studio. I wish we could all do that. Sidechain your bass, EQ the other instruments out, and gain staging is another thing actually, which I've started doing in the last few years, which is you numbers don't matter that much, I suppose, but normally I'll say, if you look on here, I'll have my kick at about -6 dB, and I'll bring my bass down at play the track, where's my kick? So I normally have it kicking around 6 dB here, -6 dB, and I'll have my kick just a little bit lower than that, maybe about 10 dB. My bass about 10 dB lower. Where's my bass comes over here? Around there, but that's without the sub bass. And then I'll bring my hi-hats in. My snare will come in at about the same level as my kick, and then everything else will start to drop down. Then you'll end up with a really nice balanced mix. And headroom, you'll have plenty of headroom as well, because everything will be peaking at around 6, and then you can add your mastering chain on and do stuff like that. if you want to do that. Remember, if you do try mastering, you can destroy your mix as well. So yeah, I mean, that's it. So that's the end of my first episode. If you've got any suggestions, anything you want to learn, it'd be really good if you could put it in the comments below, and I'll knock up a video. Again, I'm not saying I'm an expert at this, but I'm happy to release any knowledge that I have and help others progress in the field. Yeah, that's it really. So anyway, if you like what you've been hearing, if you like the track's at soundcloud.com/exospherics. That's XOSPHERIX. The track's called X-Ray. It's like a trance track, 90s vibe going on there, like sort of classic trance track. But yeah, give us a thumbs up if you like it. If you don't, give me the thumbs down, I know. And give me the comments if you don't like it. Tell me why. I want to make this good. I want to make this better for you. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you join me on my next video. Cheers, bye.